Welcome to today's episode of In the Gym with Michael Petrella. We're going to be looking at a couple of common exercises and how people tend to cheat as their form breaks down once the exercises become harder. Also, we're going to explore a little bit into the world of Vince Gironda, the original Iron Guru, the trainer to the stars, and showing some of the unique exercises he used to get results with his clients. When people are progressive resistance training in the gym, the idea is to work intensely enough to stimulate an adaptive change in the body. Now this means working fairly hard, whether we're using quite a bit of volume or quite a bit of intensity. Now what everyone tries to do, whether they're aware of it or not, is bring in additional muscle fibers from surrounding muscles. The idea though is we are trying to target a specific muscle when we're exercising. We're going to start with the lateral raise, and the idea for this exercise is to work the side head of your shoulder. Now, as people fatigue, whether it's a machine or a dumbbell or a cable, they tend to change their body's mechanics. I'm going to show you a couple of common ways people cheat on some very standard exercises. I'm going to tell you why they're cheating and hopefully why we can avoid this and why we should avoid this. So I'm going to get Justin do a couple of just standard lateral raises on the machine. He's going to do them properly. Chest is up, he's showing good posture, and elbows are just coming up to the side. Making a 1 second pause. I want you to come up just a touch higher there, Justin. I want you to be about parallel with the ground, slightly above it. Come on down. When you come up higher than parallel, his upper back starts to do a lot of the work. That's perfect. We're going to do one more proper repetition. His elbows are up nice and high, parallel with the ground. That's great. Stay on the bottom for a second, Justin. Now the first thing people do when they're looking to cheat on this exercise is they start trying to pick the resistance up with the forearms. I want the elbows pushing through the pads. So what you'll notice is when he comes up, these elbows just ever so slightly flare out. Even a little bit more than that. You can see this slight bend. It's very hard to even notice. But when people do this, it is now the forearm muscles. Do another one just like that, Justin. That's perfect. Just trying to pick up this weight. Now the other thing that he just demonstrated on that, as it gets worse, as the shoulders start to fatigue, and we're trying to use more forearm now, which is not the goal of this exercise, the elbows come off of this pad. So he comes on up, and you can see there's now a gap here. At the very top, they may come back into contact, but he picked that whole resistance up without using his elbow. A lot of forearm being worked here, but this is not a forearm exercise. It is a shoulder exercise. I'm going to get you to come back down again, Justin. The next thing that I see people do, again when they fatigue, is they alter the mechanics left to right. Now some machines, they have a fused movement arm, which means that if he picks this side up, the left will come up with it. But this is an independent movement arm machine. Quite a few machines are like this. So what people tend to do when they fatigue is they come up unevenly, and they're trying to leverage their body left and right to get this resistance up. So as he's coming up, he might be close to fatigue, close to failure, and you can even go a little bit faster there, Justin. Good. We're just going to do one more. And you can see there's just this left to right body movement. There's going to be movement in the midsection. Now, the side of his shoulder is still working. Come on down. But the reason his body is moving is because he's trying to get additional muscle fiber from his back muscles and from his abdomen. I no longer want people to train in this fashion. Once you can no longer perform another repetition with good form, with the form he showed at the beginning with his chest straight up and down and good posture, that's when I want you to terminate a set. The other thing I see people do, and this is normally when they have way too much resistance on the machine, is they actually come front to back on this. So in the beginning of the movement, he's going to lean forward, and as he comes up, he's going to leverage that weight. Come on down. Again, at the bottom, he's leaning forward, and as he comes up, he's leaning back to leverage this weight. He's trying to find additional muscle fibers from the lower back, but in all reality, it really is not going to help him. It doesn't make his shoulders any stronger. It's just allowing the rest of the body to do the movement. Again, when we're focusing on a muscle, in this case, the side of his shoulders, this is where we want the movement to be. The more tension on this muscle, the better the results are going to be. For the next movement, we're going to use another shoulder exercise. Now, we used a lateral raise, which is an isolation movement. Now we're going to use a compound movement in the press. And this is another exercise where people try to break down their form very, very early in the set. So first I'm going to get Justin to do these repetitions properly. You're going to use the handles here. I'm going to help you right to the top, Justin. So again, his chest is up, his back is flat against the pad. He's showing very good posture. He's going to come straight down, keeping the posture, Come a little bit lower, right about there, straight up. I like people to go to about their collarbone, assuming there's no injury in the shoulder. Right up, Justin. Perfect. And we're just going to do 2 more proper repetitions. Nice and smooth, right up to the top. That is excellent. 1 more repetition. Fantastic. Come down for a second. Now again, especially with these pressing motions, whether it be a chest press, a shoulder press, a bench press, I find a lot of people like to use far too much resistance. The first thing that I see people do is they turn this into almost a bent bench press. So I'm going to get you to come up to the top one more time, Justin. Now, instead of being straight up and down and being very tight to this machine, they tend to push their hips out from the seat. And now he actually has a bit of an angle here. It's going to come down more to his chest than his shoulders. Now, he could use more resistance in this position because you push up, he's using the stronger muscles of the chest. But again, we're not doing this motion as a chest press. If we want to do an incline press, we would use an incline press machine or use a bar or dumbbells for incline. This is putting a tremendous amount of strain on his lower back because there's nothing supporting his lower back right now. That's perfect, Justin. Come on back. I'm going to get you straightened back up for a second. Now, the other thing I see people do, especially if they're working out intensely, he may have done the first 8 to 10 repetitions with proper form, but as the shoulders start to fatigue, he quite naturally is trying to find muscle fibers from somewhere else in his body. So I'm going to get you pushed straight up. And whereas right now, his feet, they are flat on the ground, but there's no movement in him. He's just bracing himself, which is fine. As he comes down into the bottom position, they actually stand up ever so slightly. I'm going to get you to push up through your legs, exaggerate just a little bit, but push at the same time with the handles. Good. And then when this comes down, it's going to push him back into the seat. And as he pushes up, he's trying to push through the legs. And I see people almost standing up in this machine. Do 1 more like that, Justin. The weight's pushing him down, and now he's pushing through his legs. Again, this is not a leg exercise. This is a shoulder exercise. So any movement from his hips down, you can put that down, Justin, is not going to do anything to stimulate the muscles of his shoulders. In my opinion, the exercise that's cheated the most in the gym is the simple bicep curl. I don't know exactly why this is, but almost everyone I see is either attempting to use far too much weight in order to stimulate the biceps. It also seems to be one of the lifts where people ask how much you lift, kind of like the bench press. So I'm going to get Justin to do a couple proper repetitions, and then I'm going to show how the form breaks down. So again, very good posture, and all the movement is around the elbow. Come straight up, hold, good, ease down. I don't mind if your elbows come up a little bit forward, but for the most part, that's the shoulder working. So I want all the movement right in the bicep. I'm going to get you to do 2 more here, Justin. Straight up, stand straight up and down, that's perfect, good, ease down. And 1 more repetition. Fantastic. Wrist staying nice and straight, bicep is doing all the work here. So the first thing that starts to happen when the form breaks down is you start leaning back. Now, done properly at the end of the set, I'm not too much against this because you can still make the bicep work quite a bit. But if people, they like to do it right at the beginning of the set, which is an indication that they're using too much resistance. So I'm going to get you to do a few repetitions and you're leaning back. You can exaggerate a little bit there, Justin. Good. Easing down again. Once he's getting to the top, the lower back's working, the upper back is trying to leverage this weight. This is no longer a good curl. It's taken stress away from his biceps. Good. Come on down, Justin. Now, the other thing that I see people do, and this becomes more dangerous because he's accelerating the weight more. More momentum is taken over. People actually use their hips to leverage the weight forward. I even let them see people, the bar sinks down and they push off with the hips. So I'm just going to get you to use the hips to start this motion. And they're almost catching the weight halfway through. Good. You push right through the hips. Good. Yep. And this really isn't that exaggerated. All kinds of people do it this way. Let it sink in, push right with the hips, and he's really catching this weight at about the mid-range position. Very little exercise for the bicep is being done in the first half of this movement. The last thing people do to make the exercise easier, and again, they may have done the first 10 repetitions in a very productive manner. When they come up to the top of the motion, they're no longer holding in a position where the bicep has work. They're actually bringing their elbows underneath the bar. So I'm going to get Justin to do a couple repetitions. Now in this position here, his arm is contracted. It almost looks like his biceps are doing work, but this weight is actually pushing down on him. I'm going to get you to exaggerate that just a little bit more, Justin. You're going to come on up, elbows right underneath, and you can see this weight is pushing down. There is no effective resistance for this bicep anymore. It may have been a case where he did the majority of the set properly. Now as the form breaks down, he's making it easier. I'm going to get you to leave it right there. Once the form breaks down, the exercise is getting less and less for the targeted muscle. So when we go to concentric muscular failure, I want everything to be within the realm of what is good repetitions, what is good form. Once we go past that, we're just bringing less and less resistance and less exercise for the target musculature. The next exercise we're going to show is a rotator cuff machine. Now the reason I picked this exercise is because the rotators are very, very small muscles. Whenever we're training a smaller muscle in the body, and it really doesn't matter which one it is, you're going to find that the much larger muscles that surround it are always going to try to take over the exercise. So Justin, I'm going to get you to put your arm up into the pads, and we're going to do a couple repetitions properly. So again, we're looking for a straight line across his shoulders. He's got his spare hand on the handle, keeping his posture. That's perfect. Come on down. And he's keeping his wrist perfectly straight. All the rotation is in the shoulders. I'm going to get you to do 2 more here, Justin. That's perfect. Ease down. Make sure you come all the way to the bottom. Nice range of motion. Come on up and hold. Perfect. I'm going to get you to come down to the bottom for a second. So as the muscles inside of his shoulder start to fatigue, the first thing that people try to do in this case is they try to use their forearms more. So as he starts to come up, instead of this wrist being straight, it tends to unlock, and he's using the muscles in his forearm, very similar to the lateral raise, to try to pick this resistance up. And then at the top, he's actually moved less in his shoulder, and they'll try to move their wrist out and back to make this movement arm go further. Now the movement arm has continued to move back, but there's been no additional movement in his shoulder, which is ultimately what we're trying to do with this exercise. So I'm going to get you to come down. We're going to do that in real time. Right from the beginning, the wrist moves out, and he's flicking it at the top. And again, a lot of this motion in the bottom and the top are being done more with his forearms as opposed to his shoulder. I'm going to get you to come down again, Justin. Now, a lot of times, this is the problem when we're going deeper and deeper into a set. Most people don't start the exercise like this, but this is what it turns into. The other thing people do to try to keep a set going or possibly use more resistance than they can handle is they bring their hips off the seat, they move them forward. Now, I'm going to get you to start in the right position, and as you're coming up, the weight might be too heavy or it might be fatiguing. As you come up, he then leverages his body. Again, we're going to have less rotation in the shoulder doing this, but the weight is still going to move up. And again, this is just a bad way of doing things. He's trying to find musculature in different parts of his body. The effective resistance for the shoulder is quite a bit less. The other thing people will do, again, and this is more as you start to fatigue, people may set up in the machine right or set up in their exercise right. This is how form breaks down as we start to fatigue. He comes up, and his arm is starting to lift out of this pad. This is the 3 delts, or the 3 heads of the shoulder, 3 heads of the delts that are starting to move his arm around as opposed to the rotator cuff. As he comes up, one more time here, Justin. His elbow's out of the pad. He's exaggerating a little bit, but now the larger muscles of the shoulder are trying to come into play. Come on down, Justin. Now, we just showed one example of this, but you'll find that almost every time we train a smaller muscle, as it starts to fatigue, these larger muscles come into play. I want you to really take a look at your form and make sure that you're going to fatigue with these smaller muscles. Your results are going to be much better, and your chance of injury is going to be far less. Now, this is going to be a little bit different than the previous rotator cuff. We're going to be using very, very strong muscles, which is the latissimus dorsi, which are the major muscles of the upper back. I'm going to get Justin to reach up, and he's going to grab the handles. Now, we're going to do a couple of proper repetitions. Make sure you're secured with your legs underneath the pads. I'm going to get him to lean back just a little bit, and you're going to draw straight down to your chest. Perfect. Easing out. Again, nice stretch in the back. Straight down to your chest. Perfect. And once you have this flex in the spine, I don't want you to move back any further than this. Do another repetition here, Justin. Come on down. Good. He's holding his posture every single repetition. Now, what I want to show is, without any motion in his upper back, without any real exercise for his upper back, he can make this movement arm, he can make this weight stack move quite a bit just by leaning back. Just use your lower back. Come back and forth. Now come forward. Again, there's no exercise for his upper back, but that weight stack is moving. So when you see people leveraging themselves into the machine and moving at the lower back, this is exercise for the lower back, but we're not trying to train the lower back with this exercise. Also, what you'll see people do, and there's two ways that people do this, either they put far too much weight on the exercise to begin with, or again, they may have done the first 8 to 10 repetitions in good form, is they start leaning back further and further, and they start the pull about halfway through, and then if they can't get the resistance all the way down, they actually try to bring their chest to the bar as opposed to bringing their bar to the chest. So you see, he's leaning back, come on down, leans back, and then he's going to start leaning forward before the bar actually gets to him. So do a couple a little bit faster there. Lean back, then lean forward. Good. Leans back, he's coming back. Now he's coming forward. His chest is actually engaging here. His lower back is engaging. The form is getting sloppier by the repetition. Just do one more bad rep here, Justin. Good. Come on, right up to the top. So you're seeing a lot of movement that has nothing to do with the movement around his shoulders and the movement around his elbows, which is bringing the effective resistance for his upper back. Again, and I've said this a lot of times, it's not about the resistance on the bar or on the machine or whatever exercise you're doing. It's about the tension on the muscle. By keeping the form strict right from the first repetition to the last repetition, the muscles, the targeted muscles, are going to work quite a bit harder. You're going to get better results, you're going to get faster results, and most importantly, you're going to be safer in the gym. In the last 30 to 40 years, personal training has become very big business. Now, its roots can really be reached back to one man, and his name was Vince Gironda. Now, he was given the title of the Iron Guru. He got this title by training all kinds of celebrities with Clint Eastwood, Denzel Washington, and even Tommy Chong of Cheech and Chong as some of his notable celebrities. He also worked with some of the best bodybuilders of the time, including Lou Ferrigno, and also being trainer to the very first Mr. Olympia, Larry Scott. Now, one of the things that he really was known for was his unique exercises. He had all kinds of exercises that are just not seen in the gym today, and he felt that these were the exercises that worked the muscles best. One of the reasons I believe that they're not seen much in the gym these days is because they always involve you using less weight. He was always trying to really isolate a muscle as opposed to a powerlifting approach where you're trying to leverage as much weight as you possibly can. So we're going to show a couple of those exercises for you. The first one we're going to do, Vince Gironda called this a perfect curl. So Landon, I'm going to get you to pick up the bar. Just stay here for a second. Now, most people, when they do a bicep curl, they actually lean forward because it's easy, there's no resistance here, and they leverage the weight back. Vince Gironda wanted people to do this in reverse. So at the beginning of the motion, you were actually leaning back, keeping some tension on the bicep, and then as he curls the motion, he's going to come forward over top of the bar. Perfect. Lean back. Good. And you can even come a little bit more forward there, Landon. Right over top of the bar. Good. This way the bicep is doing all the work, even in the contracted position. One more here, Landon. Perfect. You're going to come down to the bottom. Another bicep exercise that he was famous for was called the drag curl. And again, this was an attempt to put all the focus on the bicep as opposed to the much larger, stronger musculature of the back. So what he got people to do was you bring your elbows back, you keep them in this position for the duration of the repetitions. And when you curl, you're going to keep this bar as close to the body as you can. So come on up, Landon. Good. Ease down. Close to the body as you can. It should almost be skinning your shirt. Good. Again, a nice contraction in the bicep. No lean. You don't need a ton of resistance. We're going to do two more here, Landon. Ease down. Perfect. One more repetition. Excellent. The next exercise we're going to show, he called it a 45-degree pull. Some people call it Gironda's version of a lat pull. Now, most people, they sit down on a machine, they leverage their legs into the machine or a seatbelt, and they try to pull as much weight as they can. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. This is a perfectly safe exercise. But Vince Gironda, he let the body move a little bit more naturally. It really became its instrument for developing the muscle. So he would set up a high cable, And he always wanted to be around 6 feet tall. You can play with it a little bit for your body type. But that's really where he wanted you to start. So Landon, I'm going to get you to grab an overhand grip of this bar. Just move that bar out of the way. I'm going to get him to take a big step back into the room because in the fully extended position, I want this weight stack to be up. I don't want him to be able to bottom this weight stack out. So come up just a little bit here, Landon. I want a nice line between the top of this cable and his glutes. And as he pulls, he's going to open his whole front up, make a nice contraction in the back. And this is where it gets a little different. He's going to let this almost drop down nice and low, and you're going to come down with it, Landon, and stretch out. So he stayed upright a little too long there. So when he comes and does the pull, you're going to open up, 1 second pause, and then you're going to come down with this bar. And there's a circular stretch in the back. We're going to do 2 more, Landon. Pull right to you. Perfect. Let this come. There you go. Now you're getting the feel for it. 1 more good repetition. Perfect. Easing out, stretching out, and that's going to be perfect right there. You can bring that down. The next exercise we're going to do, it's called a frog sit-up. Now, when a lot of people do sit-ups, they put a big dumbbell on their chest, and they're just trying to reef their upper body up as quickly as they can. This is why people hurt their lower back when they're doing sit-ups. So I'm just going to move this bench. I'm going to get you to lay down there, Landon. Now, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to cross his legs and tuck them together. This is why they call it a frog sit-up, because of the articulation of his lower body. So you're just going to lean back, nice and easy. Now you're going to put the hands on the back of your head. Now I don't want him coming all the way up. This is just a crunch as opposed to a full sit-up. The lower back is going to stay on the bench the entire time. So you're just going to come up about 1/4 of the way, Land. Perfect. And you can see, even with no resistance, come on up, hold. These abs are working very, very hard. We're going to do a few more here, Landon. Perfect, easing down. We're going to do 2 more repetitions. See, the abs are working very hard. He's got no resistance on the back of his head. Come on up, hold, good, ease down. Now, one of the reasons that he has the legs crossed is he's trying to eliminate hip flexor activation. A lot of ab exercises are actually hip flexor exercises. This is going to put the strain right on his abdomen, which is ultimately what he's trying to train here. I'll get you to jump up for 2 seconds, Landon. Now, the next exercise we're going to show, we don't have the proper equipment to do it exactly as Vince would have wanted. The big difference is our bench is kind of low to the ground. To do this properly, you would want a bench that's much, much higher, and I'll show you in a second. So this was one of the way Vince Gironda taught people to do rows. Again, with a lot of dumbbell rows, people are getting in positions where it's almost like a one-arm deadlift. They're shrugging way, way too much weight. They're not working the musculature in their upper back. So the way I would have wanted this to be is that these dumbbells were actually hanging and not touching the ground. Unfortunately, this is the tallest bench that we have. So the way Vince wanted this done was your hands are facing away from your body. You're in a pronated grip. And he actually wanted these elbows to be flared from the body. This is not normally what you see people do in a row, but this is how he taught them. And as you bring the elbows up, and again, normally they'd be in a greater stretch position, bring them up, you're actually going to lift your head and lift your legs at the same time. And come on up, we're going to do 2 more, perfect. 1 more here, Landon. Ease down. Now again, this would be a better exercise if we could have a little bit more stretch in the bottom position. The nice thing about this exercise, it's very, very difficult to cheat. You can't really leverage your body because you're laying flat. Now, Landon's doing it the way Vince wanted, with his head coming up and his legs coming up. I do feel that a lot of people, especially beginners, could potentially strain their lower back doing it that way. So if you're going to do this exercise, the slight modification I'd make is you just keep your body flat and you just do the rowing motion. I'm going to get you to do a couple repetitions there, Landon. Perfect. And again, normally this would be stretching out. He's pulling his shoulder blades together. That's very key. His shoulder blades are pulling together. That's great, Landon. I'm going to get you to leave it right there. Thank you for watching today's show in the gym with Michael Petrella. I'm hoping that what we showed you today was keep your form tight. You never want it to break down. The better you can keep your form from start to finish, the better your results are going to be and the safer you're going to be. I also hope you take the time to explore Vince Gironda. Search for him online. Look for his several different exercises that are going to be very unique. They're very good exercises and they're going to help develop results in the gym.